So yesterday we looked at all of the blue cards, now it's time to take a look at and see which black cards made it into the cube. Hello and welcome to Life Begins at 20. My name is Mark and thank you so much for joining me. Now, if you've been following along this budget cube build along series, it's now time to actually get into seeing which cards I've put into the cube. What I will mention to start off with is that I've upped the cube size to 450 cards rather than the 405, but that's just going to be going through testing, and then hopefully during that point in time I can see which cards are performing, which ones are not, and then slowly whittle it down to 405. But at this moment in time, with Masters 25 coming out as well, during the point in time where I was building this, I actually wanted to put in 10 cards from there and a few other bits and pieces as well, just to kind of see how the cube was going, and then we can look at bringing that size down. But for now it's 450 cards, and there'll be a link in the description below as well for the cube tutor link to see that cube as a whole list. If you want to just copy it, feel free to. If you want to make your own changes and suggestions, again, let me know in the comment section below. If you see some cards in there you think, oh, why have you got that in there? I can think of a better one. Great, let me know in the comment section as well below, because to be perfectly honest, I don't know every card in Magic. I'm not going to say I do, because that would be mental. But if there are cards that I've missed that would make a huge improvement over what I've got, again, let me know in the comment section below. You'll know what all of the art types are as well from previous videos that I've put together. I will link the playlist on the screen now for you. There'll be a card on the screen so you can take a look and see what's going on there, so you can know what all the different archetypes I'm going to be supporting are in this cube. But for now, let's get stuck in and see which cards I've put in. So starting off now with the 1-drops in black, and there are two things that we're going to be looking out for within the creature section here as well, and black as a whole. And the primary kind of archetype that we're going to go for is control, but we've also as a secondary one trying to support aggro here within black, and this is why we've got to start off with Carnophage here, a 2/2 for 1. During your upkeep you either pay 1 life or tap it. That's a little bit of a downside there for your 2/2, but still pretty strong. Next up we've got Disowned Ancestor. So it's a 0/4 for 1. It's got Outlast of 1 and a black. You can put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. You can only do it as a sorcery, but if you've got a load of excess mana, you can crank this up to be quite a big beefy body later on in the game. Next up, we've got a new card from Rivals of Ixalan. It is a foil as well, though you can't really tell very well, and that is Grasping Scoundrel. So it's a 1/1 for 1, and as long as it's attacking, you get +1/+0. So it's really a 2/1 for 1 when it's attacking, and to be perfectly honest, it's always going to be attacking. Next up, we've got two cards here which are pretty much the same. We've got Typhoid Rats and Ruthless Ripper. Now they're both 1/1s with Death Touch for 1, but the difference being with Ruthless Ripper is that you can morph this if you wanted to by paying 3 mana, having it down as a 2/2, and then you can reveal a black card from your hand to flip it, and when it's turned face up, target player loses 2 life. So that is really the only difference for them here, but it just means there's an extra Death Touch creature within the 1-drop section for black, which would be great for shenanigans with Viridian Longbow. And the last of the 1-drops we've got in black is Vampire Lacerator. So again, it's a 2/2 for 1, and at the beginning of your upkeep you lose 1 life unless your opponent has 10 or less life. So the key thing there is get your opponent down as quickly as possibly can, and then the downside will not be there at all. So moving on now into the 2-drops, and we're going to start off with Basilica Screecher. For 1 and a black, you've got yourself a 1/2 flyer with Extort. So whenever you cast a spell, you may pay a white or a black. If you do, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain that much life. So it's a nice way of draining out your opponent as well, on top of all the other spells that are going to disrupt your opponent's hands. Next up, we've got Child of Night. So it's a 2/1 for 1 and a black with lifelink. And with the spells that you've got going on in black where you may end up paying a bit of extra life, it's always nice to be able to get a bit of lifelink back. Moving on to one of the older cards that we've got going on in black, we've got Kuombage Witches. So for 2 black, it's a 1/3. You can tap it to deal 1 damage to a target creature or player, and it also deals 1 damage to target creature or player of your opponent's choice, but you get to choose your target first. So if this is the only thing on the board, potentially, you could kill off something important to them. They do get to put an extra damage either on yourself or, onto one of your creatures, but you get the choice of it first, so you can do a lot more damage in the long run with that. Next up, we've got Dorothy Slayer. So for 2 black, it's a 2/2 with Shadow. Each turn it attacks if able, and I mean it's an attacking creature, it's an aggressive creature, you're always going to be attacking with it. Shadow just means it's going to make it unblockable unless your opponent's obviously got Shadow as well. Next up is another card from Rivals of Ixalan, and that is Dusk Legion Zealot. And I'm giving this one a test. I mean, it's probably going to be exactly the same as its 3-cost brother, which is Phyrexian Rager. Now, for me, having yourself a 1/1, enter the battlefield, you get to draw a card and lose 1 life, and you get yourself a body on top. That's not bad at all in the long run. Getting extra card draw is always going to be handy, and 1 life isn't too bad to lose, especially with the way black works. Next up, we've got Hand of Silumgar. So for 1 and a black is a human warrior, again with Death Touch being a 2/1. You're going to be happy swinging in with that, and you've got a great defensive play there. If your opponent's got something big, they'll be hesitant to come in against that. Next up, we've got Nightscape Familiar. So for 1 and a black, it's a 1/1, and blue spells and red spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, but it's also got Regenerate on it as well, so you can happily swing in, carry on attacking, or use it as a blocker, regenerate it back, and it just keeps coming and coming and coming. Yes, it's probably going to be better if you end up splashing for one of those 2 colours, but I'm happy for it to sit in the black colours there. Next up, we've got Returned Phalanx, and for 1 and a black, it's a 3/3 defender. Solid defender there. And for 1 and a blue, it can attack this turn as though it didn't have defender. For me, it wasn't quite a Dimir card. There were better cards to have into that section. And just for black, being a 3/3 defender is still pretty solid. And splashing for that 1 blue mana isn't necessarily going to be the end of the world there. Next up, we've got Sinuous Vermin. So for 1 and a black, you've got yourself a 2/2 with Monstrosity 3 if you pay 3 and 2 black. And if it becomes monstrous, it also has Menace as well. Nice bit of way of having evasion there. On a 5/5 body, that's going to do some serious work. Next up, we've got Skittering Scourge. So 2 black is a 3/2 flyer. When you successfully cast a creature spell, you sacrifice it. So for me, happily just keep this on the board, swing in, get rid of your opponent, disrupt your opponent with all the other spells you've got going on. And if you actually need to have any extra creatures on the play, then you're going to end up losing this creature card, but that's not the end of the world. They're still going to have done some good work for us. And last of all, we've got Thrill Kill Assassin here. So for 1 and a black, it's got Death Touch, and it's also got Unleash, and to be perfectly honest, you're always going to be using the Unleash there, giving it a 3/2 for 2 with Death Touch. Happy days. Moving on now into the 3-drops, we've got Chittering Rats to start off with. So it's a 2/2 for 1 and 2 black. When it comes into play, target opponent puts a card from his or her hand on top of his or her library. Nice way of disrupting the opponent. It means they've only got what they have in their hand to play with again for an extra turn. Next up, we've got Crypt Rats, and this card is pretty much, apart from Holy Light, which we've had earlier on in the white section, it's probably one of the only Wraths that we've got in Pauper full stop. And it's a great card to have. 2 and a black, it's a 1/1. X cost, it deals X damage to each creature and player, and only spend black mana in this way to be able to use this. But having a Wrath on the board is going to be really, really useful in certain situations, and Crypt Rats is there for that. Great card to have. Next up, we've got Dead Reveler. So for 2 and a black, it's a 2/3 again with Unleash, but to be perfectly honest, it's going to be a 3/4 for 3. That's the way we end up using it. Next up, we've got Gangrenous Zombies. So for 1 and 2 black, you've got a 2/2, which you can tap, and it deals 1 damage to each creature and each player. If you control a Snow Swamp, Gangrenous Zombies deals 2 damage to each creature and each player. So for me, I don't actually have the Snow permanent, but if we got to the point in time where I could just say, look, everything is a Snow permanent, every one of these, you could snow covered everything. I just wasn't going to pay the money to actually have all of my basic lands in the QB snow ones. But for me, I will happily to class everything as a snow permanent. But even if it only does the 1 damage rather than the 2, that's still pretty strong. Next up, we've got Liliana's Spectre. So for 1 and 2 black, it's a flying 2/1, enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card. Great, disrupting your opponent's hand. You get yourself a flyer there with evasion to be able to swing in for some extra damage. Next up, we've got Phyrexian Rager, and again, you're going to see this like the Dusk Legion Zealot we saw earlier. You've got yourself now a 2/2 body. When it enters the battlefield, you draw a card and lose 1 life. So it's 1 extra mana for 1 extra toughness and power. That could prove to be really useful, and we'll see during testing how it ends up working, which one ends up being better. But for now, they're both in, and card draw again is always going to be helpful. Next up, Skittering Horror. 2 and a black, you've got a 4/3 here. When you play a creature spell, sacrifice it. Again, it's a nice aggressive creature to be swinging in for, doing some extra damage, and when you need to play the extra creature, great, you can. But you're getting a lot of value there. Next up, we've got Stinkweed Imp. So for 2 and a black, it's a 1/2 flyer, and whenever it deals combat damage to a creature, destroy that creature. but it's also got Dredge as well, of Dredge 5. So if you would draw a card, instead you may put exactly 5 cards from the top of your library into your graveyard. If you do, you can return this card from your graveyard to your hand and otherwise draw a card. But yeah, that's great thing to have there to be able to get this back or get some extra card draw if need be. Next up, we've got Vampire Envoy. So for 2 and a black, it's a flying 1/4. And whenever it becomes tapped, you gain a life as well. So you're going to be getting a 2 life swing every single time it attacks, as long as there is no flying defense on the other side of the board. And last of all, we've got Wake Dancer. So for 2 and a black, it's a 2/2 and it has a morbid trigger. So whenever it enters the battlefield, if a creature died this turn, put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield. And to be honest, a morbid trigger should be very, very easy to actually achieve with black because there's so much removal available. Moving on now into the 4-drops, and we've got Faceless Butcher to start off with. So for 2 and 2 black, it's a 2/3. When it comes into play, remove target creature other than Faceless Butcher from the game. Then when it leaves play, you get to return that creature back to its owner's control. So it's basically a Banisher Priest in Pauper for black, so can't complain there. Next up, Falcon Wrath Noble, 3 and a black, it's a flying 2/2, and whenever Falcon Wrath Noble or another creature dies, target player loses a life and you gain a life. I do like being able to drain the opponent down as well, and that is a little sub-theme that's kind of going on there. Next up, we've got Akiba Gang Shinobi. So for 3 and 2 black, it's a 3/2 with Ninjutsu, 3 and a black, which is pretty much the reason why it's a 4-drop, because Ninjutsu is the way you're going to be doing it. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, that player discards 2 cards. I love the way that we can disrupt the opponent's hand really nicely there. And it's really great, especially if you're going to be playing, say, a blue-back control deck. You've got Spellsplitter Sprite, you get to swing in with that, Ninjutsu this in, discarding 2 cards from the opponent is going to be brutal. Next up, we've got Perilous Shadow. So for 2 and 2 black, you've got a 0/4, and you can pay 1 and a black, and Perilous Shadow gets +2/+2 to the end of turn, so you can pump this up as many times as you like. So that's quite strong there. And last of all, we've got Thorn of the Black Rose. So for 3 and a black, it's a 1/3 with Death Touch. Again, works really nicely with Viridian Longbow shenanigans there. And when this enters the battlefield, you become the Monarch. You get yourself extra card draw. It means your opponent wants to attack you to try and get the monarchy off you for that extra bit of card draw. And I really do like that side of things as well. Having the Monarch in play within the cube is a really nice thing to have, and it just provides different gameplay styles. So moving on into the 5+ drops, we're going to start off with Grey Merchants of Asphodel. Fantastic card if you're playing Black Devotion. 3 and 2 black. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent loses X life, where X is your devotion to black, and you gain life equal to the life lost this way. Worst case scenario, you get it, drain them for 2 and you're going to gain 2 life, just from him by himself, but if you've got plenty of other black creatures there, it's going to do far, far more. Next up, we've got Warren Pilferers. So for 4 and a black, it's a Goblin Rogue, it's a 3/3. When it comes into play, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. If that card is a Goblin card, then this will gain haste. The Goblin card side of things is not really that help, is not really the reason why it's here, but it can provide to be useful if you go and say, for example, going black-red, there's definitely goblins there as well. But for me, it's going out to get a creature back from the graveyard, put it back into your hand, be able to play something is always going to be handy. Next up, we've got Dross Golem. Again, this is really here because it's a black card with the affinity for swamps. So for 5 cost, which you're never going to be paying 5, it's got a 3/2 body with fear. Fantastic, really, really strong card to have there. Next up, we've got Sultai Scavenger. So for 5 and a black, you've got a 3/3 with Delve. So each card you exile from your graveyard makes it cheaper, and it's a 3/3 flyer. Again, it's never going to cost you 6 mana, but it's just a nice card to have there. Next up, we've got Twisted Abomination. 5 and a black is a 5/3. You can pay 1 to regenerate it as well, which is really good because you can just keep going and going and going and going there. Or it's got Swamp Cycling as well, and there are plenty of ways of getting cards from your graveyard back into play, so that's going to be nice to have. And last of all, we've got Gurmag Angler. I mean, we couldn't really not have it. It's great zombie fish. So for 6 and a black, again with Delve, it's a 5/5, and it's never ever going to cost you 7, so really strong card to have there. So moving on now into the spells of black, and the instance starting off with, there's plenty of removal in black and ways of disrupting the opponent's hand. But start off with, we've got Dark Ritual. Love the old school artwork on this, and it just is pay 1 mana to get 3 black mana to be able to get something out a lot quicker and earlier than it should be. Do like that. Next up, starting off with one of our pieces of removal, instant speed. Target creature gets -2/-2 for 1 mana. Great. Next up, we've got Tragic Slip. So for 1 mana, it gets -1/-1 to the end of turn, unless a morbid trigger happens, in which case it gets -13/-13. Again, killing off something isn't going to be difficult to get that morbid trigger. Next up, we've got Vendetta. So for 1 black, it's instant speed, destroy target non-black creature. It can't be regenerated, and you lose life equal to that creature's toughness. So again, if there's something a little bit bigger on the board that has got regeneration, this just means you're going to be able to get rid of it completely. Next up, we've got Diabolic Edict. So here we've got ourselves instant speed, but instead target player is sacrificing a creature, so it gets around the whole hexproof part. Next up, we've got Doomblade, destroy target non-black creature for 1 and a black. Love the artwork from this dual deck as well. I really do like the way that Doomblade looks now. Next up, again, another piece of removal, Grasp Darkness, 2 black, instant speed, target creature, and we get -4/-4 to the end of turn. Great way of getting rid of some of your bigger creatures. Next up, we've got Last Gasp. Exactly the same thing there as Grasp of Darkness, except it's 1 colourless and a black rather than 2 black, and it just means that you get -3/-3 instead. Next up, we've got Terror. So for 1 and a black, instant speed, destroy target non-artifact, non-black creature, and it can't be regenerated. Again, that's very useful text to have on there, especially with getting rid of something that's been quite obnoxious in the game. Next up, we've got Victim of Night. So for 2 black, instant speed, destroy target non-vampire, non-werewolf, non-zombie creature. So there's going to be some black creatures in there that you're actually going to be able to get rid of, but for the most part, it is pretty much destroy target non-black creature. And I do like the artwork on that as well. Next up, we've got Spinning Darkness. So for 4 and 2 black, you may remove the top 3 black cards from your graveyard from the game instead of paying its casting cost, and it deals 3 damage to target non-black creature, and you gain 3 life. Last up, we've got Death Denied. So for X and 2 black, you get to return X target creature cards from your graveyard to your hand. Really nice. You can spend a lot of mana on this at the end of your opponent's turn, get yourself a load of creatures back to be able to play out on your next turn. That's really, really handy to get a load of creatures back from the graveyard, especially, for example, with Twisted A-Bomb, when you've used the cycling cost there to put it into the graveyard. It just means you can get it back again as well. So moving on now into the sorceries, and we've got Duress here to start off with. It is a foil one, and the only reason I haven't got the new artwork from the Ixalan block is because this one is a foil and I don't have a foil of one of those, so that may well change in the future. But it starts off with Duress, 1 cost, sorcery speed, target opponent reveals his or her hand. You may choose a non-creature, non-land card from it. That player discards it. A nice way of getting a little bit of early removal, disruption as well, early on in the game. If you can get it done in turn 1, that's fantastic. Next up, we've got Unearth. So for 1 black, sorcery speed, choose target creature card in your graveyard with total casting cost 3 or less and put that creature into play. And if you haven't got anything and you just need to get an extra card draw, you've got cycling as well. So that's nice to have. Next up, we've got Chainer's Edict. So for 1 and a black, sorcery speed, we get to target player sacrifices a creature, but it's also got flashback as well for 5 and 2 black. And it's one of the from the Vault 20 foils as well, so that does look really nice. And to be fair, the bending on it isn't too bad either. Makes a change from all of the other cards we've been opening recently. Next up, we've got Hymn to Tarak, 2 black, sorcery speed again. Target player discards 2 cards at random, and that is just that can be brutal, absolutely brutal. Potentially a little strong in the Pauper cube, but we'll see from testing if it becomes a little bit obnoxious. But overall, I still think it's a very, very good card to have. Next up, we've got Night's Whisper, 1 and a black. You draw 2 cards and lose 2 life. More than happy to do that. Next up, we've got Ashes to Ashes. So for 1 and 2 black, it removes 2 target non-artifact creatures from the game and deals 5 damage to you. So for example, if your opponent's got some massive great creatures you just can't deal with, that'll end up doing more than 5 damage to you. Fine, more than happy to play that. Next up, we've got Read the Bones. 2 and a black, scry 2 and then draw 2 cards, you lose 2 life. So Night's Whisper there, but you actually get to scry 2 to start off with, which means you should get a better quality of cards off the top of your library in that draw stage there. And then last of all, we've got Evinkar's Justice. So for 2 and 2 black, with buyback of 3, it deals 2 damage to each creature and each player. So you've got a little bit of a wrath there. If you've got an extra 3 mana, so casting it for 5 and 2 black, you can just keep playing it over and over and over again, which could become a little bit brutal, but again, it's highly unlikely you're ever going to have that much mana to spare regularly. So moving on now into the enchantments in black. First up, we've got Tortured Existence. So 1 cost enchantment, pay 1 black, choose and discard a creature card, return target creature card from the graveyard to your hand. So it's a way of being able to get rid of potentially some low-cost one-drop creatures you've got in your hand to potentially get, say, Twisted Abomination back after you've cycled it off. So that can be very, very useful to be able to get some of your bigger threats back into your hand to be able to play them. Great. Next up, we've got Paralyze. So for one cost, when it comes into play, tap an enchanted creature. Enchanted creature does not untap during its controller's untap phase. That player can pay an additional 4 during his to be able to untap it. So you're basically taxing your opponent to be able to use their own creatures, which is quite cool. And I really, again, do like the old artwork on this as well. Next up, we've got a Vampiric Link. So for 1 black, enchanted creature deals damage, you gain that much life. So you're basically giving a creature lifelink. That's all that really is there, and I'm more than happy to do that for the 1 mana there. Next up, we've got another enchantment, and I did like the Amonkhet enchantments, I really did, and maybe some of the other ones could try and force their way in. I just need to test them a little bit more. We've definitely got the one in green for sure, though. So what we've got here, enters the battlefield, you may put a -1/-1 counter on target creature, and the creature that you enchant gets +1/+1 on lifelink. Again, lifelink is very, very handy to have. Buffing the creature up and a piece of removal all on 1 card. That could potentially be very, very good and nice 2-for-1 there. Next up, we've got Pestilence. So for 2 and 2 black, you can pay 1 black to deal 1 damage to each creature and to both players. If there are no creatures in play at the end of any turn, Pestilence must be discarded. So obviously you could wipe the board completely if you really wanted to, and then it means you have to get rid of it, or you could just leave potentially 1 on the board if needs be. But more than likely, if your opponent's got something massive, you can wipe away the board, or if your opponent's playing a tokens deck and you've got bigger, stronger creatures, happy days. And then last of all, we've got Endless Scream. So for X and a black, enchanted creature gets X+0, and that could be as much or as little mana as you're willing to put into it, and that could potentially mean a very, very, very strong creature. So there we have all of the black cards that I've got within the cube at this moment in time, and it definitely fits into the role of control for the initial starting primary archetype that I'm trying to actually support, primary role within the cube for black, because there's plenty of removal, there's plenty of hand disruption and creatures that are just going to really, really irritate the opponents and just come in and do some significant wreckage on the board, which is great. And we've also then got aggro being supported as well, with plenty of 1-drops and 2-drops to really swing in there to try and get that heavily supported as well, because that's what I'm hoping for. The black secondary role can be aggro, because I want to have more aggro support through the multicolored guilds as well. So that's definitely why they're in there as well, and I think I've done an okay enough job. We're going to see how it works in testing, but if you let me know in the comment section below if there's any of the cards that I may have missed that will be an improvement, I'd be very, very interested to hear your thoughts on this. And there'll be videos every single day this week to say which cards, all the different colours that are inside of my Pauper Cube. So hit the bell notification icon next to the subscribe button so you don't miss any of those videos. And what I would mention as well is that I've done a collaboration very recently for Paper Magic, because I know you've all been asking for this very recently about getting some Paper Magic on the channel, and Pauper Magic gameplay and getting some cube play gameplay as well is definitely on the horizon. So there is a video of Challenger deck gameplay that we put together the other day. Definitely give that a watch so you can get an idea of what it is we're going to be achieving with our Paper Magic gameplay as well. It's mainly going to be cube for 2 to start off with, and then expand further, and hopefully get into 8-man drafting and see what goes from there with the actual video content as well. So definitely stay tuned for that. I would just like to take this moment to thank my Patreons of the channel. I can't thank you enough for the help and support that you're giving me. If you'd like to do the same, head over to patreon.com/lifebegins@20, and there'll be a link in the description below for that as well, where there are plenty of rewards to choose from. With your support, we can really push to make this channel even better. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button, and if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button for new videos every Tuesday and Friday. With your support, we can really help this channel to grow. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.